Welcome to Skills Without Borders podcast, where we're dedicated to share skills needed to break career barriers for health, STEM, and public health professionals worldwide. Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Andrea Clark, and we have a special guest with us today, Marissa McKool, who is a coach for women in public health who helps break free from the cycles of burnout and reclaim their balance so they can have more peace and control in that next step of how they look moving forward. Marissa, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to pivot this to you because I want you to kind of tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Marissa McKool. I have spent my whole career in public health. I've worked in sexual violence prevention, reproductive health, government, nonprofit, academia. I've done it all. And I hit burnout in 2017. I like to joke before it was cool. But really, no one talked about it. And when I hit burnout, like a lot of people, I came into the field with a passion and excitement, and I didn't know I was burnt out, but I knew I was unfulfilled. I knew I was stressed, and I knew I wanted a way out. But all the messages I got from everyone around me were kind of like, "Oh, this is the way it is. Kind of suck it up." And I really would not. I'm stubborn. I would not settle for that. And I tried so many different things to get out of it, advocating at work, exercising, all the calendar tools, therapy. And it wasn't until I hired a coach who had been coaching stressed out lawyers. Oh, wow. So not even in public health. But what I learned from her helped me so much. And I took a lot of it and adapted it to public health and spent the next couple of years continuing to use the skills. Okay. And then COVID hit. And I realized we all have a lot more work, but I'm not as stressed as everyone else. And I know it's not because I'm smarter or a special snowflake. I realized, I just have these tools and other people don't. There was no one in the field really coaching on this or teaching these skills. And so I started doing that, and it's kind of evolved since then.
Wow. It's nothing more powerful when you've had to navigate those spaces yourself. So then when you get your clients or other partnerships that lean into your expertise, you can kind of share those real life tools that you had to utilize yourself as well. So that's fantastic. And I really love the work you're doing. I experienced burnout myself. I was always that person that was a go-getter. No task was too big for me until I recognized that my yeses were expensive. And I had to be more mindful of what I was saying yes to, because on the inverse of that, I'm saying no to something else, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. So like you said that you've been, you experienced burnout before it was a hot topic or was, a term that we casually use now. So burnout is a conversation now that we're all aware of and been aware of for many years. We have language around it now. I think when you went around, experienced it, the language wasn't really there. It was kind of like, suck it up. Go take a yoga class, get your nails done, and you'll be fine, right? But why do you think burnout is still such a pervasive issue, even with more awareness today?
Working in public health, what we know is awareness doesn't translate to change. Mm-hmm. You can have awareness without change. And what I've observed, especially since COVID, because I think COVID was the catalyst for the discussion around burnout, is there's a lot of discussion and I think waiting for the field to change, for organizations to change, for systems and structures to change. And although, yes, we need our organizations and our systems and structures to change. I'm not denying that. I want to be very, very clear. I think that's part of the reason burnout rates are continuing to stay high is because those things don't change overnight. And a lot of the people experiencing burnout don't have full agency or control over changing those things. And so what ends up happening, I get lots of women on my consults or in my trainings who are saying, well, I'm waiting for work to change. I'm waiting for work to do this, or I'm going to get a new job, or I'm waiting for my boss. And what ends up happening is because systems and structures and organizations take a long time to change in a positive way, then we're still stuck in burnout. And the good news is there's a lot you can do individually if you're experiencing burnout. You do not have to wait for your organization to change. Like, for example, when I was burnt out, I was doing the job that once was 3 separate positions consolidated into one because of layoffs and funding cuts. And when I got out of my burnout, I stayed in that position. I didn't get a new job. We didn't get more staff. We didn't get more funding. But all the tools I learned and I applied to my life, like actually, how do you set boundaries? How do you say no without guilt? How do you manage your time? How do you stop overworking? I was able to get out of burnout without anything external changing, and then prevent burnout from coming back when COVID was happening. So it's actually good news. There's a lot you can do about your own burnout, and we don't have to wait for the field to change.
That's good. That's really good, Marissa. I hear be the change that you seek. Don't put that responsibility on another person or essentially another organization. So that's really good. So when we're thinking about this change that you told us that we definitely need to employ in our lives to make sure we have more of that balance for ourselves, where do boundaries fit into the picture? How can we, set boundaries and really help ourselves to stay ahead and prevent burnout and promote more sustainable work-life balance and habits for ourselves?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought this up because I'm actually in the middle. Every couple months I do a 5-day live training called the Overwhelm Solution, and I'm doing it this week. And yesterday was all on boundaries. Wow. And so I'll share some of the things I shared with people in that training. I think we need to be very clear that what's hard about setting boundaries is not the boundary itself. I think pretty much everyone listening to this podcast can verbally say the word no or communicate no in some way. We can shut down our computer. We can turn off our notifications. Like those things we can execute. Yes. What makes boundaries difficult is the emotions that surround it. And I find most of the time when people are trying to set boundaries, the reason they're not successful is they're not addressing the emotional aspect of it, the guilt they feel, or the worry that someone else is going to be upset with them. And so what ends up happening is we don't set the boundary or we give up on it because we're trying to avoid those negative emotions. And so if we want to be successful at boundaries, we have to get really good at allowing, navigating, being in charge of, managing the emotions that go around setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. The emotion, around and that may tie into the self-talk that comes with that emotion, right? When it comes to boundaries of what are they going to think of me? Is it going to look like I'm not a team player? So I think the self-talk can kind of integrate into promoting certain emotions around those boundaries as well. So that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. And it's funny. I have a winter circle that I do with professionals as well. And we were having a topic on the hustle culture, right? And really breaking down what that means and how is that going to serve you or not serve you in the world and what we live into today. So as we know, there are societal expectations when it comes to the hustle culture, right? We have that ideology, more, right? So when it comes to the hustle culture, how do those forces contribute to burnout? And what are some ways that we can resist this narrative of we have to have more to deem ourselves as accomplished, successful, or even just credible in our field?
Yes. So we have been taught in lots of direct and indirect ways that happiness and rest come after achievements and accomplishments. So just one concrete example, like at least for me growing up, I was not allowed to watch TV until I did my homework. Now, I don't want to villainize that parenting technique, but unintentionally, it's one way it's communicated. After 8 hours of being at school, you have to do more work before you can rest or before you can get pleasure or enjoyment or happiness. And that's just one example. There are many, many, many examples that we are socialized in school, in the school structure, in our religions, in our communities, in media, in music. And so we internalize that. and operate from this belief that I have to get more done or have to get accomplished. And then on the other side of the rainbow will be rest, will be peace, will be happiness. But that actually doesn't work, because I think probably most people listening have had the experience where you do get a bunch done and you still can't stop thinking about work. You're not really able to fully rest, or you're not happy. You're so exhausted you physically are not happy. And that's because what creates our happiness or fulfillment is not how much we get done. It's actually how we think. Our interpretation of what's happening, how we respond to challenges. And so what ends up happening when we are chasing productivity to seek happiness or rest, we end up on a hamster wheel that is never ending. Because when you really think about it, you are going to have a to-do list until the day you die. There's no end to a to-do list. Once you get some stuff done, more stuff comes up. And so this idea there's some end to the to-do list where suddenly we'll feel better, that doesn't work. That's why there are people who retire and then they're still stressed. And you hear them say, well, I don't know how I got all this done when I was working. And that's because they're still operating from that belief of I have to do a lot to rest or to feel happy. And that's just a fallacy.
Yeah. So I was going to ask that, is that a delusion then, that we're actually trying to accomplish this ever growing, ever evolving to-do list, but is there no real light at the tunnel? Is that really just a delusional state?
My perspective, this is the way I think about it, and this is a theory, of course, right? But I really think we operate from this place because systems of oppression have really taught us to. Hustle culture, white supremacy, the patriarchy, because who benefits when we are hustling and on that hamster wheel so long we're exhausted? Systems of oppression, because we don't have the energy to show up, to dismantle these systems, to be innovative, to be creative, to help others, let alone just enjoy our life and have joy and fulfillment and success. And so when you look at history, even let's say you take the industrialized revolution, that really started having people work 14 hours without pay, or with very limited pay in dangerous situations, and then people reaping the rewards. Yes. And we know there's a lot of racism involved there, sexism, right, ableism, and this continues on to today. So I really think of it as it's kind of an outcome of how we've been socialized around systems of oppression, which is why I think the narrative that rest is resistance, which Tricia Hershey has a whole book on this, it's fabulous, I highly recommend, is really powerful, because in a lot of ways, learning how to rest is a way to take our power back from the ways that systems of oppression try to keep us burnt out and exhausted.
Oh, this is a fantastic conversation, Marissa. You're striking some chords with myself, if I must say. When it comes to rest, let's really deep dive into that, because I'll be honest and vulnerable myself. Like, I was used to traveling 4 and 5 days a week. Every day you look up, I'm in a new hospital, a new laboratory to produce, set up shop, hire, and all the things, right? So I think I got into a rhythm of just staying busy, right? And so whenever, I transitioned into, a different life outside of the hustle and bustle of Washington, D.C., down here to Florida, my life changed, and like I said, I survived burnout. And I had started getting anxiety around rest. I was crying. I didn't know how to rest. And I say that, in your experience, why do so many people struggle with giving themselves permission, and I don't say that word lightly, to rest?
Yes, and what you experience is very common. And I think there's 2 layers. I think the first is the permission to rest. But then when we do, rest can feel really uncomfortable at first.
Okay.
And that's because rest is a skill. And it's a skill that I would argue that actually, when you're born and when you're younger, that we are better at. And then based on how we're socialized in the world, we lose that skill because we're not focused on it. It's not reinforced. It's not supported. Yeah. So I think the reason that we struggle to give ourselves permission and the reason it's uncomfortable are very similar, however, because we have even unconsciously, this narrative that we're doing something wrong if we're resting, that we should be doing more, that we're lazy, that we're missing out, that we're falling behind. And so it can feel really uncomfortable because resting goes against the narrative of we should always be doing more or something's wrong with us. And so a lot of the times, actually with my clients, we have to address those beliefs first and really seeing nothing's wrong with you for resting. It doesn't mean you're lazy. Nothing's gone wrong. You really have to shift those beliefs to start to find rest enjoyable.
That's good. Now, I have a thing I say, let's break this thing down like a fraction. When we're talking about rest, are there different types of rest, and how can we identify which one we need most?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this. I think a lot of people think of rest as a set of actions, but how many of us have said, I need a vacation from my vacation? Sure. Or gotten a pedicure or massage and just sat on the table thinking about our to-do list, right? So it's not, yeah, me too. It's not the action itself.
Okay.
Rest is the experience we have. This is why there are some people, and I've met them, who find sitting in traffic restful. Believe it or not, right? And so the way I define rest is I think about rest in 4 categories. Physical, so that's like physically resting. That might be laying down, that might be stretching, that might be going on a walk. Physiological, that's the rest your body does that's largely out of your control. Like when you sleep, your brain consolidates memories so you have more space to process the next day.
Okay.
But then the other 2 types, I think, are the types that we really need more of: mental and emotional rest. Mental rest is the freedom from the mental load, from constantly thinking negative thoughts or criticizing ourselves or constantly being in the past or the future.
Yeah.
And then emotional rest is the ability to process through emotions. So we're not stuck in anxiety when we're trying to rest. So we can actually get into that calm state. So we're not stuck. For me, when I was burnt out, I was stuck in resentment. So the ability to process through emotions and get unstuck from negative emotions. So that's why I say rest is not about the action. Because if someone could be sitting in traffic and feel really mentally and emotionally rested, and someone could be on vacation and feel really stressed and really anxious.
Yeah. So you have to really check in with yourself and say, where do I feel most at peace, most calm? And that's not contingent on the environment, because you're right. I've heard that term. I need a vacation from my vacation. So what was the point of taking the vacation if more than likely mentally they were on the go, or, just fact checking? I noticed when I traveled to Africa last summer to do some research work in the public health space, that it's a different rhythm there, right? And so my on the go personality, I had to really talk to myself and say, okay, it's more laid back. You go to the cafe. It's not you get your coffee and they immediately shoo you out the door with a ticket. It's you get your top coffee and maybe 20 minutes go by and they're just now coming back to check on you. So I had to recalibrate. I said, so I won't lose my mind, because of course, like you said, we're in the Westernized culture. I had to recalibrate to their societal norms. It was a more go with the flow, a lot ease and flow. And I noticed when I came back, I appreciated it a lot more, So yeah, I think like you said, it's different levels of rest. Now, Marissa, on a practical level, what strategies or practices have you found most effective? Because I know you coach hundreds of women in your extraordinary work that you do. What strategies have you found most effective for women in particular, for reclaiming rest from a busy schedule?
Yes. So I like to think about the strategies in 2 categories. There's the tactical strategies, and then there's the internal strategies. And I really believe that if you're doing the tactical strategies without the internal, you're not going to have success. So here's what I mean. A tactical strategy might be physically putting rest in your calendar, scheduling it. And I recommend to my clients scheduling that first, putting that in first. So that might be going to yoga, taking your lunch, whatever it may be. That's a tactical strategy. But if you don't have the internal strategies of how to process your emotions, then if you feel really anxious about something, you're just going to ignore that block on your calendar and work through it. Yes. Me too. Me too. I was the queen of like, I just got to finish this one thing and then I'll have lunch and then my lunch is cold. It's 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we really need to have both.
Okay.
And I really think even though this is not like a fun sexy checklist or like a quick overnight fix, I think the emotional work is the biggest factor in it.
Okay.
Because if we want to be able to stick to our calendar and eat our lunch, if we want to be able to leave the office on time, if we want to be able to set boundaries, if we want to be able to say no, we have to be able to navigate the negative emotions that might come up around it without seeing that negative emotion as like, oh, a sign I'm doing it wrong and I should just keep working or I should just say yes. And so I think that internal piece really has to go hand in hand with those external or tactical strategies.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I have a couple more questions and we
Yeah.
can wrap it up, but I could talk to you all day because you're so informative and, knowledgeable in this space. And if you could leave our listeners with just one actionable step that they can take today to set those boundaries, what would it be?
Okay. Can I give more than one?
Oh, you can give as many as you want.
Okay. So one I would highly recommend is start practicing processing your negative emotions. And so what this looks like is all negative emotions are sensations in your body, like the fast beating heart, the tightness in the chest, the sweaty palms. The reason we struggle to process these sensations is because we're often in our head and there's a story happening in our head. You're going to make them feel bad. You're going to burden them. Like your team's going to get mad. You're going to get so far behind. And we're so in our head believing that story that it drives us to overwork and exhaust ourselves. But we need to get into our body and feel the sensations in our body because when we do, they will decrease and the intensity will go down. And here's why that's important. That allows our prefrontal cortex, which I call our thinking brain. It's a part of our brain that allows problem solving, reasoning, logic, time to turn on. This is the part of our brain that distinguishes us from other animals, from our ancestors from millions of years ago. And we want this part of our brain on because we can problem solve. If we want to finish work at 5 and we aren't done with the report, we can problem solve for that. Maybe we delegate. Maybe we ask for an extension. Maybe we tomorrow decline a meeting. But if we are lost in our anxiety and listening to the stories that we have to finish, we aren't able to access that level of thinking. So we have to reduce the anxiety to get into that thinking brain.
That's good.
So that's number one. Number two might ruffle some feathers.
Uh-oh.
One of the things I did from my coach in the very beginning that it was challenging, but it has really set me free, is I eliminated the word busy from my vocabulary. If I ever say the word busy, it's usually like very rare, number one, and two, just kind of colloquial or whatever that term is, like in random conversation. Because here's what the word, first of all, busy is totally subjective.
Yeah.
Someone could, like, if Taylor Swift looked at my schedule, she'd be like, girl, you ain't busy. Right?
Yeah.
And then if I look at like someone else's schedule, I might think the same thing.
Yeah.
It's subjective. But what we don't realize is when we use the term busy, it's subconsciously telling us that we don't have control over our time and our schedule, which is not true. So I started shifting out of using the word busy and started shifting into really taking radical responsibility. So stop saying busy, stop saying I have to, stop saying I can't, and start saying I'm choosing to, I'm choosing not to. Because you have full control. You're a human. You're an adult with free will. You have full control. So if you shift into owning that, I'm choosing this, I'm not choosing this, you have so much more agency. Even if you don't change your choices, just being honest that you're choosing it gives you much more freedom.
That's really good. And you make me think about the word busy. If you just think about the energy around that word,
It's
I can hear
stressful.
something just zipping by, right? Without your control, right? But then when you just reframe that and said, no, I'm choosing to do this, I can hear that the more autonomous control in that no, I'm making an active, engaging choice to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm not choosing to do that. So that's really good, reframing that language around that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Marissa, thank you so much for sharing this invaluable information and bringing your insight to our Skills Without Borders platform, and helping us to, like I said, reframe rest as it's not as a luxury, but really as a necessity. So for those who want to learn more about your extraordinary work and learn more about you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, come check me out on LinkedIn, Marissa McKool, or come check me out on my website, The Public Health Coach. Our next Overwhelm Solution Challenge, which is or training, is totally free. The next one's October 2025. I also have a freestanding video series called From Panic to Purpose. Anyone struggling with anxiety and fear and overwhelm with the funding changes, the political changes, what's happening in the field, that's a totally free video series to help you shift from that panic to purpose. It's available at any time. If you go to my website, you can sign up for it and get that support.
Fantastic. And I appreciate that. And I will definitely have those links that we can put in the description here on our podcast, so they can just go straight to that website and get the tools and the resources they need. So thank you so much for your time today, Marissa. I've greatly enjoyed our conversation. I felt that you were reading my soul a couple times, but it was very beneficial.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Not a problem. Well, guys, that's a wrap for today's episode of our Skills Without Borders podcast, where passion meets purpose and professionals are empowered to thrive without limits. So if you find that today's conversation was valuable, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify podcasts so you will never miss an episode with packed insight and inspiration and actionable skill sets that you can use. And if you want to see the faces behind the voices, go ahead and subscribe to our Upskill channel, YouTube channel, for exclusive video content and behind the scene information. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and as I always say, keep soaring higher. Until next time, thank you.